This month on Patreon, Mika requested I review the DreamWorks animated film, The Road to El Dorado. Many years ago, I did a retrospective on DreamWorks animation, but it's always nice to revisit their films every once in a while, and The Road to El Dorado is definitely a good one. Partly inspired by the Hope Crosby Road to films and the Rudyard Kipling story, The Man Who Would Be King, part of the appeal of the film are the interactions between Tulio and Miguel. Karen Kline and Kenneth Branagh have hilarious chemistry, and the animators also chose the perfect expressions for them. The love interest Chell also proves to be a humorous supporting character, and the animators do a great job of her facial expressions whenever she pops up. One underrated character in this movie is the Chief of El Dorado. There are a few moments he has that seems to imply he is aware they're not actually gods, and views them as a way to bring morale to his people. But that's my interpretation. At one point in production, they considered showing that the armadillo that follows them to El Dorado is the real god. With that knowledge, I made sure to watch the armadillo on this viewing, and there are definitely still hints of that. While most people will focus on the main villain, the High Priest, and he does prove to be a strong antagonist, I thought Cortez was rather menacing too. He only appears sporadically, but he leaves an impression. Helps that he's voiced by Jim Cummings. One of the big selling points of The Road to El Dorado is that they reunited Elton John, Tim Rice, and Hans Zimmer, the same team responsible for the music in The Lion King. Clearly, DreamWorks wanted to recapture that same magic. However, you could probably cut the songs out and it would not affect the plot at all. The songs are fine, but it's hard to compete with Circle of Life and Can You Feel the Love Tonight. One of the high points of the film is the animation. I already mentioned the character animation, but the backgrounds are fantastic too. El Dorado is beautifully drawn and painted with the proper amount of wonder. Watching Road to El Dorado again, it's hard not to feel sad that DreamWorks' hand-drawn animation division would close 3 years later. I'm actually not sure why The Road to El Dorado flopped in its release. I remember it being heavily marketed, and I did see the film when it came out. It's breezy and funny and has all the ingredients to be a crowd-pleasing hit. Apparently the film's making was not so cheery. The directors and animators did not have a good time working on it, as the story was frequently changed, and this ended up being a many cooks in the kitchen kind of production. The movie was even intended as more serious, before the decision was made to go in a more comedic direction. At one point during the writing process, Miguel was supposed to die and be paraded around on the horse. Wow, I'm sure glad that did not make the final cut. However, despite the production issue The Road to El Dorado may have faced, none of that comes across on screen at all. It's an example of how silly the current mindset of let's judge a film's possible quality based on how smoothly the making was that seems to go on in film discussions is. To conclude, I think The Road to El Dorado holds up quite nicely. It's a humorous adventure with some lovely animation that manages to get by on the strength of its lead characters and great set pieces, including even a fun ball game. By the way, that ball game, not an invention of the filmmakers apparently. The Mesoamericans actually played that exact sport long ago, probably one of the few elements that could likely be called historically accurate in this movie. Then again, if you're viewing The Road to El Dorado to see an actual representation of South and Central American history, you're watching it wrong. Now, The Emperor's New Groove, all that, true story.